When creating a community, what are some important pillars that you uphold?
So I think this question has to be answered in the mindset of a carpenter. When you put a room together, what is the first thing that you actually start with? Normally, it's the walls, the floor, or the ceiling. You do a 360 of what the room is, and then you visualize what you want it to look like. I think that's the most important part. Let's focus more on the foundation. Foundation is your family. Foundation is your community. Foundation is what you wholeheartedly believe in and you protect to the utmost of your abilities. So I think when you're talking about pillars, I think it starts a little bit lower than that. I think it starts from the ground up, quote unquote, as we can say, and you have to start with your foundation. So the foundation is you, your heart, your mind, what's going on in your soul. That's what needs to actually be reconstructed first. So now you can teach those pillars to actually stand up on their own and be able to strengthen the rest of the room, or AKA the community. And therefore, there is a structure that is in place, and that is neighborhoods. Then it extends out to cities. Then it extends out to states. Then it extends out to countries, and ultimately the world.
I like that answer. I feel like it was just well thought out. I like that answer. I really do like that answer.
Oh God, I did not think it out, and that was literally on the spot and answer. So that's how my mind works.
No, I like that. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Take a Space Podcast. I am your host, Leah, and we get to not only learn how to be advocates, but we get to advocate for a community that is sometimes, a lot of times, misunderstood. Now, we have talked about this on the show before, but I am autism community adjacent. So I'm not essentially a part of the community, but because Daniel is going through the testing and schooling and things like that, and I get to hear information from KK. I know some things about autism, but this series is really to learn for us to not to just be allies, but to learn how to advocate. So we can be really good advocates, learn the language, learn the lingo, learn how to communicate with everyone in the community, and learn how to be a good support system for those who are really struggling. So I am excited to have this conversation with, and I'm going to probably butcher your name, Jamiel.
There you go. You got it.
Jamiel. Okay. I'm glad to be able to have this conversation with Jamiel, and really, and because one thing that we haven't had a lot of in my conversations is the male perspective. And having the male perspective is so important, especially when we talk about community building, when we talk about support. We cannot leave males out of the conversation. So, Jamiel, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. The dads are in the building. That's what I'm excited. I'm excited about this opportunity. Definitely blessed. And thank you for making a space for me to be able to speak, not for all the fathers, but for myself. And will speak with the hope that it not only addresses the male perspective, but it also gives a female, a woman, a strong, awesome mother, as I like to say, or maybe someone outside the community, an opportunity to understand what we actually feel when it comes down to being an awesome father and an awesome parent.
Awesome. Well, why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself?
All right. So my name is Jamiel Owens. We got that portion out the way. Philly native, North Philadelphia, 17th and Susquehanna. That was where I was raised at, the heart of North Philadelphia. I am a parent, a father to a 13-year-old boy who is on the spectrum. He is awesome. I like to use the word awesome, hence the awesome show. Instead of autism, it kind of lessens the severity of the word autism. Sometimes right now in the culture that we live in, it's almost like a sting to one's ego or aura. So I calm it down by using awesome, because our children are awesome. They're superheroes. But I am a father to this amazing boy who changed my life. I'm a volunteer fighter here in Hatfield, Pennsylvania, which is 45 minutes outside of Philadelphia. I am a advocate for my son and individuals within the disability community. Why do I say this? Is because me, myself, I am legally diagnosed as being disabled, and I have never let that hinder my growth, my goals, and my achievements. I am a author, new author. I'm gonna put this out there right now. It's on Amazon. The book Life is a Puzzle. God gave you a cheat sheet, a 15-day devotional for awesome fathers, and it's real. I got stuff in here that's real. There we go. It's real. It's real pictures. It's my life shortened, but it gives a biblical perspective on the trials that I were being put through, my failures, but it also encourages men to think at the end of it. I ask these questions: what now? What are you going to do? How will you look at this next situation? So please support this. Go on Amazon. We'll have the link and all that information at the end of this, but let's chop it up and talk a little bit more about this. Author, father, husband, just trying to leave a legacy for my son and at least fulfill what I believe God has made my purpose and my passion in this world, and that is to love on others and to speak from love to others when it comes down to understanding autism and those awesome individuals in the community.
That's great. It's one thing that I have noticed in trying to interact with different communities, whether it's in business, whether it's in social groups or professional settings, there seems to be this language barrier because I don't know the lingo. Like, I don't know what kind of lingo to use. I don't really know what's considered offensive. I don't know, can I say these things? Can I not say these things? Can I ask these questions? Are you going to be offended? So how would you tell a person, or how would you help a person who is autism community adjacent learn how to step in without stepping on people's toes?
So I think, unfortunately, society grows. It grows. It quote unquote matures, because sometimes it doesn't. And the potential is gained from knowledge from previous society. So we use so many different things, not only in the autism community but other communities. Colloquials, funny colloquials, when it comes down to hyphenated meanings for certain things. We all use it. It doesn't matter where you're at in the world. You use something to abbreviate what you're actually saying. Even in text messages, we do it. I love this community because the basis of it is love. So you will find that a lot of autism parents are long-winded, which means they don't want to shorten what you need to know. We want to break it down to you. Like, from day one, you asked me, oh, well, how did you get into this? You see, my answer was long-winded because there's so much that we have to pack into this to let the people know that, for one, this is something we care about and very passionate about. Two, we don't want to give you the wrong information, because we're not only hurting ourselves, we're hurting you, the outside community from the autism community, and then we're still hurting all the people that we represent. So we want to make sure that we give you a never-ending amount of knowledge and information, but we do it from a sense of love. So we welcome you over to our house. We have conversations on the phone. We send you long text messages with links on news articles that we read. That's how we do it. That's how we teach the general public. Me, give you an example of me. When I do my events, when I do my public speaking engagements, I have my business card that has my logo on it, and on the back has my personal email for the show, and it has my personal telephone number that you can call 24/7. And I hate to say it like this, but that's my selling point. Selling point as in, this is the point where I speak to you as a stranger and you're like, okay, I feel comfortable talking to him, giving him a call. In my mind, that is me being open enough to discuss anything that might come across your mind when it comes down to my awesome son, to the autism community. So that's a strategy that I use. I give out my information. Give me a call. Oh, aren't you worried about people, strange people? No, I'm not worried about that because my heart is out of love. I'm not looking for anything else. I don't have any mischievous plans. I'm looking to help someone, and preferably fathers, get them off that cliff that they're about to jump off, like I did when I first found out that my son was when he was diagnosed with autism. So it's strictly out of love. We go in, we do the most, we do the most. Be prepared for that. We do the most. We are going to talk your ear off. But at the end of that day, I guarantee you, you will feel more connected with us and with the autism community than you ever felt before.
Well, I appreciate that. I haven't really run into a situation where I felt uncomfortable to ask questions, but I know that there are a lot of people who may be adjacent or who may not even know a lot about it. So they just, because it's different from them, I'll just stay away. I'll just go the other way, and I won't really mess with it because it's not my thing. But I want to make sure that there is a bridge that can be crossed, so that they say, hey, I may not know, can you teach me? So
Yeah.
I like that you're willing to teach and you're willing to help. So let's kind of shift a little bit and talk about your experience, especially as a father. At what point was your son diagnosed?
Whew, man. So he was diagnosed at the age of 3.
Okay.
And what I'm actually working towards when it comes down to the autism community as a whole, the world as another community, and also my Black and brown brothers and sisters in the community, is the prevalence of autism. Getting your child seen and evaluated. Oh my God. People call me Jay. Oh my God, Jay. My child is of a skin color which is not favorable in society right now. He's already, or she is already labeled something, and you want me to go to a doctor, sit behind a desk, and get him or her labeled for something else? Man, you're crazy. I'm not. And this is the reason why. When it comes down to autism, there is a very, very short window when it comes to getting help, services that are needed, and actually planning out a structure that is going to benefit your child. Very short window. That window is starting to close around the age of 3 and 4. They will never stop growing and learning, but the wealth of knowledge and ABA therapies and OT, which is occupational therapy, ABA, once again, those acronyms, applied behavior analysis. These therapies are needed because it teaches motor skill function. It teaches interaction, communication. Your window is closing. So my brothers and sisters in those communities, autism prevalence is needed. You need to get your child diagnosed like me and his mom did. We seen a change in our child. And we were like, yeah, you know what? That doesn't seem like what he should be doing at the age of 3. So we took him down there. We got him diagnosed, which was the hardest thing, but at least we had a roadmap. We had a starting point. So now we know, okay, well, we're not crazy. We're actually very, very in tune with our child. So now let's go on to the next step. What is needed now? Another thing that I'm working on is, sorry, another thing that I'm working on is the integration of autism individuals, those autistics, those on the spectrum, being placed into police systems. Oh my God, Jay, are you serious? You're trying to get me to give my sons or daughters information to the cops? Yes. Here's the reason why. You, as the parent, have a responsibility to teach your child the proper way of interaction with law enforcement. Hear me out. I'm ex-corrections. So I'm telling you this because I've been there. I'm also a volunteer firefighter. I have interaction. I'm a civil servant, and also I had law enforcement experience. We don't know a lot of information until we either get there on scene, we do our initial size up, and we're trying to figure out the facts. in a fast-paced situation where we got to think on our toes. By you giving that information into the computer system, my son or daughter is this. They are highly functional, which is a term that is not really used in autism anymore, but they are verbal, they are nonverbal, they react to this. Please keep this tidbits, information. Now, not only did you give the officer more tools on his tool belt, worst case scenario, they do get in an altercation or a investigation involving your child or your awesome adult, but now you're transferring that responsibility to the police department. Hey, officer, thank you for all you do. I did my due diligence here in my household, and I will continue to let them know what is the proper way to address an officer. But now I handed the torch to you. I gave you my child's information. I gave you their triggers. I gave you everything possible. So when they look into their system, they're like, oh, I have an individual on the spectrum. Wait a second. I don't think I can handle this call. Let me call for backup. But while I do so, to lessen the fight or flight scenario in a individual on the spectrum, which they normally have, let me turn down my radio so this individual is comfortable. Let me turn down the lights a little bit so the individual is comfortable. Key things that officer knows. That officer knows. So I think it's a lot of training. It's a lot of stepping up. You know, once again, I talk to the men about being the head of household, stepping up, getting out there. Hey, I think there's something going on with my child. I would like to get them evaluated and really dealing with it. You know, we sweep too much stuff under the rug or we try to be passive with it. We can't do that, especially not with an autism diagnosis. So I encourage people, just like me and Shane's mom did, age of 3, we felt something was going on with our son. We didn't know what it was. We went, took him to go get seen. He was diagnosed for autism. We hit the ground running. Hit the ground running. Well, I did. We'll get more into that. His mom did. Hit the ground running. And now, straight A student since the 3rd grade, 13 years old, played cello, very smart, intellectual, you know, it's endless, you know, but that wouldn't have happened if we would have waited till 7 or if we would have waited till 10 years old, because we're in our own feelings saying, oh, he'll grow out of that, you know, that old school mentality. Oh, that ain't nothing. That's going to go away when he gets older. No, asthma goes away when you get older. Autism doesn't. It either is going to get better or it's going to get worse, unfortunately. And I'm just telling you the truth, just being real as much as it could be.
So let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's first talk about where your head was when you got the diagnosis. So you knew that something wasn't quite right. Going through getting the assessment, did you go through the doctor or did you go through the school?
We went through the doctor. So
okay.
Go ahead, finish it with your question, and then I'll go a little bit more into that.
Okay. So going through the doctor and getting the assessments done to actually hearing the diagnosis, where was your head at? Where did you find yourself?
Okay. So, so it was, I remember it. I talk about it in this book. I speak on it heavily. So let's start off with just really addressing the elephant in the room. Back in my first marriage with my first son, I was horrible. I was dealing with a lot of things in life that was giving me pressures as a man, and I was not strong enough to handle them. So when you add on autism to that, it was like, oh, what now, God? Like, geez, this is the hand you give me. Oh, I can take this. So my initial thought, and I want no one to really try to say, oh, well, that's okay. I want you to really focus on what I'm about to say, because as hard as it is for me to say, the more I speak about it to the audiences, you know, different podcast hosts, it becomes easier because this is going to change someone's life. I did not want my son anymore. Told me my son had autism. I wanted to leave my family. Real rap. hit that reset button because I sat there and focused on the I part. Why is God doing this to me? I don't deserve this. I should have a normal child. This didn't come from my side of the family. I never had someone with autism on my side. Began pointing fingers. I can't do this. I need a reset button. So unlike video games, we don't have reset buttons in life.
Right.
You either go with the punches or you get trampled over, either or. I was a coward and I wanted to make a reset button no matter what the cost was. And unfortunately, the cost was my wife and my family in that matter. I became a statistic and was divorced, separated 3 years after the diagnosis, and then divorced 5 years after that. And I say I was a coward because I'm being 100 with you. And you have to pull up your pants. You have to tighten up, and you got to get in there and understand that your family needs you now more than anything, especially that child. But it starts with your partner, your teammate, your woman, your wife, whoever that may be. You need to be there for them 100 times more. The stages of grief are it's about 5 or 7. The only thing they don't tell you about the stages of grief is that it can happen one right here, and then 6 years later, step 2. There is no time frame with the stages of grief.
Right.
You have to be strong enough to sit there and be able to be there emotionally, not just physically strong, but emotionally strong, to be able to be there for your partner, the mother, and let them know that everything is going to be okay. I didn't do that. I was a coward. Stepped away, made my own reset button. And what happened with me was I lost a lot of myself. I lost a lot of time with my son. You know, I lost the connection I had with my wife at that point in time because my thoughts was, I don't want this child. I want a normal child. I wanted to start over. So I began to do what most men do. You know, we go out, we party, we hang out with the boys. You know, yo, come on out, Jay. We got you, man. We're going to make you feel better and do everything. No. What that did was it convinced me that the world was on my side and my wife and my son was against me and not a part of my world. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's bad. You know, so my initial thought coming out the office, and I wrote an article that actually was published worldwide on October 1st. That's another link too I can give you, was speaking about my thoughts. Yo, I was even thinking about going to see another chick the same night. The pain for me, because I couldn't take the diagnosis that was just given to my son. I never sat there for one moment and was like, but how does my son feel? What will my son feel? Never thought about it. And that's where we go as men, as we go wrong, because at that point in time, my ego was stabbed. You know, my pride was hurt. You know, I'm supposed to be an alpha male. I'm supposed to produce a well-functioning individual in society to be able to function without no problems. That's what I'm supposed to do, right? Right. You have to understand the most prominent alpha male in history and in time is Jesus Christ himself. He was a man of compassion. He was a man of empathy. He was a man of knowledge. He was a man of anger, but he always spoke to you in a way not to demise you, not to demean you. He always spoke in a way to teach you, but he also spoke in love. That's a real alpha male. And imperfect as we are, we're trying to chase it. And I was not that. And I'm still trying to chase them today. So that was the initial. For me, that was it,
so
right?
How long did it take you to get from denial to acceptance?
Say 5 years.
5 years. Wow. So he was 8 at that point.
5 years of destruction in my life. Granted, for me to finally sit there and be like, okay, I need to grasp hold of this, what autism is, and I need to inform myself, and I need to do something else about it. You know,
what woke you up, or what pulled you back? I should say.
Question. Okay, so I'm out here doing me, going through a divorce. At that time, the divorce, I believe, was pretty much done. Out here doing me, dating different women, trying to, get back into the dating pool. Did my thing with my son, have him. I was a weekend warrior dad. So I had him every other weekend. And really just trying to build me, get several jobs, work around the clock, not spend time with my son when I had him on the weekends because I was worried about money. And it was to the point where I lost my job. I lost the girl that I was dating at that time. I was about to lose my apartment. I barely had food in there to feed myself and my son was over on that weekend. And he was in the, and I was crying to myself in the living room. And I was just like, okay, God, you got my attention. What do I do? What are you trying to tell me? Remember it like the back of my hand. And my son spontaneously came out his room and gave me a hug and ran back in. And at that point in time, I figured out all this time, dumb old Jamiel, who was just trying to do me and wrecked his life and didn't understand the blessing that God already foreseen and gave me this child to give me a softer heart, to be able to do what my passion and my purpose is, speak to you. I didn't see that until that point. And I said, that is the love from God in a tangible form that was given to me as a blessing to raise him to be able to give the same love back out into society. But not only that, it is up to me in order to raise the spirits of other people, at first to generalize other people out here that don't understand autism. And then as I began to unravel it more and more, I said, no, I'm supposed to speak to fathers directly. This is the reason why I went through everything in my life, because there's so many different stories that are out there that are messed up. And these fathers had nowhere to go. I got out. God was graceful to get me out and to keep this blessing in my life. And he said, now is your time to go out there and express that love to everyone else. That was the time for me.
So now so you went from being in denial to really grieving what you've lost to now accepting your blessing and responsibility. Now you're at the point of learning how to build advocates or teaching other people to be advocates, and with a focus of fathers. How did we get to that point?
That point started, a little bit of rewind from the Autism Walk, starting off my platform, the Awesome Show, which was online radio in Philadelphia. I wanted to do the show, and I wasn't thinking I was going to find a platform, an outlet for it. And I found one, and I was like, oh, crap. Now I'm really official. So now I got to learn like the structure of a show, what to say, what to talk about. And then I started to really look at things that I went through in my life. And I'm telling you, it was a feeling. It's like, Jay, talk about what your life was, but don't leave anything out. Talk about what you're embarrassed of. Talk about your defeats. Talk about your triumphs. Talk about everything, but just talk about it. And that was the beginning. Setting up the structure of the show, I set it up myself, got the guest on the show, set up the questions, set up the music that was on my show. It was Christian rap, which I do listen to. I listen to secular music, everyday music, but I listen to Christian rap as well. Made sure that I put good points on there, good quotes, everything. I learned how to articulate everything in my life in the form of my tongue for other people to actually listen to, gather information, and then be able to advocate out there wherever their respective place of residence is. So that started, and then it just kept on rolling. From that, I'm like, I wonder what would happen if I write an article. And I wrote an article. My first article I remember, I was still a corrections officer in Delaware, and I was working overnight. And it was Autism Parenting Magazine, which I normally write for. They say, you have this deadline. And I was like, oh, crap, if I don't get this deadline done, I'm not going to have this publication. I sat there that entire night, did all my routine jobs, everything I was supposed to do, and wrote that article before that deadline, which was the next day. And that was my first worldwide article published. So now I'm like, okay, now I know how to write. So now it done trickles from being I guess you could say a radio personality to now being able to write articles that people will love and understand. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I could do that. Didn't stop there. Then I know you know Eric Thomas, which is like one of the big like public speakers, motivating speakers out there. I used to listen to his motivational speaking sermons, and I was like, yo, I want to do this one day. And I'm sitting there like, I really do want to do this. So I got invited to be a part of a seminar, a autism seminar with Drexel University, and begin to speak on that. That was one of them. Then I was at a national conference with Milestones, and I did that just this year and was speaking on that. Now I'm doing public engagements, speaking to people about my life struggles, the spiritual grounding aspect of it, what it is to be a man, is just a continuous snowball. Now I got other things that are planned in the works that I can't talk about right now, but they're in the works. So, God is good. When he opens the floodgates, you see a lot of memes out there that just talk about, what door you're going to take, this one or this one. And both of them are open and you have the option of going which way. I'm telling you, pay attention to that. Pay attention to that, because I wanted to be a cop. I wanted to be a cop. I didn't want to do this. I wanted to be a cop. I wanted to protect individuals that couldn't protect themselves. Well, wasn't a cop, but I'm still protecting individuals that can't protect themselves. You see how it works out? Oh, I'm not going to give you a gun because you crazy out there. You don't need that. I'm going to hold you off. I want you to go this route. Now I'm still doing the same thing that's in my heart. I'm just doing it in a different fashion. This is my weapon right here. This is my weapon right here. I'm still hurting people out here. I'm killing all that evil inside of them. You see what I'm saying? So I'm very, very blessed, very gracious. That's how it all started. That's how it all started. That's what got me here to where I'm at right now.
So what is it that makes it hard? Or let me actually back up. So when you got the diagnosis and you realized that you didn't want to be there, and then you realized, and then you went through life, went through whatever you had to go through for God to get your attention, and you making the realization like, this is what I want to do. And it started opening more doors. Are you finding that when you're doing these types of seminars or have these type of speaking engagements, or even on your radio show, that men are a part of the conversation? Or are you seeing kind of like a disproportionate number of women who access the information more, and it's getting a little more difficult to build that community for the men?
So great question. I had a speaking engagement this morning with the academy in Abington, Pennsylvania, that service those awesome individuals from K all the way up to high school. Amazing school. Was started by a mother of two autistic children who could not find services or school for herself. So she created her own school for her children and also other children. Amazing story. Shout out to Karen. Shout out. But there were only two men in the audience today. And I sat there and really called on them to really get a perspective of why they're here. And they touched on one thing that I did put in my presentation, which was, we could get into this a little bit later, was the sheltering versus the protection part. Sheltering versus protection. Ooh, that's an ego twister right there. That's exactly what I wanted to home in at. And it's funny, the both of the men agreed with that point 100%, that there's a problem. I think we have a long way to go when it comes down to the egos of men. It's not a chopping block. Don't take this to offense, guys. But in order to see more men participate in situations or areas that have to deal with autism, You got to check your ego and your pride at the door. And there's a lot of men that are suffering with doing so right now because their mind is focused on the financial aspect of taking care of their families. You know, women are the forefront. Women have always been the forefront. You're nurturing, you're caring women. This is what your God-given gift is. This is being a mother. We lack that because once again, we go by what society tells us that we need to be. But we forget that we also have a outline of what a alpha male is, what a man is supposed to be, and that's a spiritual grounding. Whatever spiritual grounding you want to practice is fine. You can't tell me one out there that doesn't promote love, empathy, or peace. You can't. You're practicing the same thing. So whatever you see to practice, and I tell men that you need a spiritual grounding to be able to be a better, awesome father, but just a better man, period. Study that. Study that. And then you will start to be able to go to these lectures, go to these engagements, go to these meetings, show up at an IEP meeting. You'll be able to be there because now you took all that fear and that anger out of your chest. And now you have the love, the compassion, the appreciation for those who actually service your child in the schools or educational institution. You know, there's so many women out here that are pioneers in the field of intellectual disabilities and in the disability field all the way around. Us men can actually be at least 50% of that workforce. We need to be 50% of that workforce, but we're not. You know, I would love to see, and once again, this is not offensive. I don't want this to be offensive. I would love to see people from my community, the Black and brown community, to stand up more. I want to see that. When people see me, they see the tattoos, they see the relaxed hair. They're like, okay. And then when I talk to them, they're like, wow, I didn't see that coming. You know why? Because it took so many years of hurt and hardships and then of opening, thanks to my son, thanks to God, and being able to say, hey, I'm comfortable with speaking with you in order for me to get here. And a lot of women today are just like, this is amazing. My husband needs to hear this. My husband needs to see this. Yes, they do. Tell them to call me directly so we can talk directly. So now I can make an advocate out of them starting at home and spreading out to the community. Man, we got to step up. We have to step up. You know, I'll be 40 in 2 weeks. I'm not going to be around forever speaking out about autism. I need the next male in the community to see what I'm doing and be like, I can do that. I can do better than him. Yes, please do. And any way I can help to make you better than me, let me know. I will do that. We need you, man. We need you.
Is it all ego? Is that fear and that anger all based in ego when it comes to men not wanting to be present or being in denial about the labels that have been put on their kid?
It's ego. You know what? When somebody is going to be a guy that's going to hear this interview and be like, oh, you don't know what he's talking about. It's not ego. But if you present that question to them and be like, okay, so what's the reason why you are not present at your child's IEP meetings? What is the reason why you are disengaged from your child when you are around them? Mm-hmm. What are they going to say? Oh, well, you know, I just feel, oh, there go that.
That was an I. There was an I. That was an I statement.
I means ego, because you're still worried about you. That's what I'm saying. Somebody's going to play this back and be like, damn, he got me. Yes, it's ego. It's ego, pride. Listen, you may not have a normal child from what society say is normal, right? But you have the next president. You have the next UN speaker. You have the next scientist that's going to help other children with their diagnosis and abilities. You have a gift and a blessing here that is here to bless the world and here to bless you. Nurture that. Let go of that ego. I didn't do it until years later. And look at how much it cost me. It cost my family. It cost the first initial time with my son. Very important moments that I missed. You know, it cost me time in the court system. Who wants to go through this?
Right.
And it's another aspect too that I want to touch on real quick. I train police officers as well on how interactions with individuals on the spectrum, but I need to get with some judges. So if anybody watching this know a particular judge in family court, I would love to have a meeting with them when I sit down. This is the reason why.
Hmm.
Scary word, fellas, child support. Here we go. All right. So you're in court, you get in there. First off, you are the worst thing to life. There is sewer sludge out there that is better than you, and you just walked into this judge courtroom. Okay. This judge knows nothing about you other than the facts presented in the court document. You don't look so good on paper. What I am trying to get to judges is when it deals with a child with an intellectual disability or a disability in whole, I will encourage the judge to learn both mother and father. First off, when a lawyer says, oh, well, the mother should get sole custody. Okay. In the diagnosis of autism, we speak about repetition and how structure helps the child. If you are a father that has always been in a child's life, and now the court system is trying to take away a part of a child's structure in order to say they're helping the mother, you are not. You are disabling that child even further. You're disabling their potential of growth and structure and love and vulnerability. You cannot separate the two. If they live in separate residences, okay, that's fine, but keep the structure going. You cannot completely take away that structure that has always been there. That's not helping the child. A lot of judges don't understand that, you know. And I think if I'm able to explain it to them, I'm not saying that, men, you're going to look good on paper, but you might get an opportunity to really plead and for the judge to really understand your case. You have a responsibility to be there financially. We do. You have a responsibility to do so. Mm-hmm. But you have to understand, and the judges have to understand that this is a very delicate situation because those individuals who have a disability love at a different angle. Their development is at a different angle than what is the social norm out here. So that's step is really getting out there to speak to those judges. I just wanted to say that. So if anybody listening to this knows a judge, I don't care what court system, Zoom is amazing. You can be all the way across the country. I will talk to you about some points that I would love for you to actually take consideration when you have a court hearing about a child with disabilities. It will make the difference in the court system. It really would. And you're speaking, hello, to someone here who's been in child support court. I made friends because they see me in child support court. So I know what I'm talking about here. This is not me on a mountain and you here on a plateau and you right here. And I'm telling you, things that you should be doing or should be knowing. I'm right here with you. If not, something more than
I want to circle back to the conversation we had about, because I want to tie in these 2 points, and I feel like these kind of go hand in hand. You talked about the points that the men kind of perked up on, which were the sheltering and protection. But then you also talked about the entering the information into the police database, right? Offering the police information so that if they were called to a situation that involved a person who's on the spectrum, they will be aware. My question would be, is there currently something in place? Because we know how bad Black and brown people are treated by the police. It doesn't happen in 100% of the United States, because I know some of y'all are going to listen to this episode and go, I never had that experience. But you probably have seen on social media time and time again how we're treated by the police. So I want to more so have a little bit more of a conversation about the idea of the pushback that you could receive by putting more labels on your kid, like, oh, hey, police officer, please make sure that if you interact with this child or adult that this person has is on the spectrum one way or another. Is there currently something in place that where the police are trained to know how to handle those individuals? And then two, as a father, when you have to deal with the idea of sheltering versus protecting, what choice, how do you know which choice to make in that instance of having your kid, okay, you know, my kid's going out in the world, he doesn't have a fair enough skin tone to pass. So how can I make sure that he's protected, or should I just keep her in the house?
So, oh yeah, it's definitely a lot to unpack here.
Yes, so it's a very loaded question, but let's first talk about the labeling in the police database.
Okay, so first off, let's definitely give a shout out to police officers out there who are doing the right thing, who are upholding the integrity of the oath that they took. I know the cops, great people. So we don't want to take away. I don't want to be another black man on here speaking about police brutality, because there are black cops. so you know, there just no African Americans who are cops. There are. There are those who are Caucasian who see the injustice and who are making a difference in their prospective precincts and communities. So first of all, I just want to give a shout out to all the law enforcement. I can pretty much say that it is another ego thing, respectively, but also too that it comes with generational experiences. So I tell you a true story. Cleaning out my great grandma's house, which I was raised in North Philadelphia, I came across her birth certificate. Freaked me out. Here's the reason why. I'm a black man. I know about slavery. I know about all the injustices that went on in this country. Some of them. We're starting to learn more. On her birth certificate, it said my grandma's name, Helen. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is her birth certificate. Wow, 1913. Below that, it said her slave name. I said, what is this? And she sat there and said, oh, that's my slave name. What? So it dawned on me. I'm like, the United States of America took a national record of a slave name for a woman who wanted to be known, who had the right to be known by a name from her parents. They had the audacity to put that on there. That's where I think people are getting their frustration from, because a lot of people know about that. A lot of people are well in tune to know that slave names were given, false identity, so many different things. So when they hear me say, Jay wants me to put my child in a police database who is this skin tone, and you think I'm comfortable with that? Are you crazy? You're setting my child up for failure. No, you are not. If information is the key, which is the society we live by today, we want information at a drop of a dime. We don't want to wait. We don't want to read about it. We want it accessible by our fingers consistently. Why wouldn't you protect your child with the same token that you respect information that is given to you by? Why wouldn't you? Because you ego trip me, I feel like that my child is going to be discriminated against because of that, because of the color of his skin? No. Does it happen? Possibly it could happen. I'm not going to say that is totally out of the situation, the scenario of possibilities, but it has to happen. We are systematically hurting our children because we are allowing outside influences into our heart that says that our children will be treated like this, and we simply don't know. That's that fear aspect. We don't know. So now we're fearful because if we put our child in the database and for some reason the officer doesn't read that, that's negligence on the officer's job, first off. But then there's something that happens to our child, we're going to feel the brunt. Oh, I should have never listened to Jay. This was a bad idea. Now look at my child. They're in the hospital. I don't know what to do. I'm angry and everything. No, remember what I said just a moment ago. That's negligence on the officer. Yes, you have a right to be angry. Yeah, hell, you could be angry at me. But you know what you just did? You secured that this department in this city has to give you an answer on why this actually happened. You're not going to like me by this, okay? Black Lives Matter movement, okay? So I love the movement. I love what it stands for. We have to keep pushing. We have to keep going. We got to do what we got to do, continue to do it. So why wouldn't we continue to do the same instance as far as when it comes down to putting our kids in the system? Why wouldn't we continue to push for this? Why wouldn't we continue to fight for this? Why wouldn't we continue to make officers and police departments responsible for this? It's the same premise. We're fighting on the same team. It's equality. I think people are too much in their ego mindset and their feelings, especially as parents sometimes, to really understand that we are no longer responsible for just ourselves. We died when we had children. You know, that selfishness and everything died. It's about our children's future. And I think people get that misconstrued because, you know, in life, we're like, oh, I got to get this new job. Oh, I got to get this new car. Oh, I got to do this. And we're constantly working to build ourselves up. But we really forget the root and what we're doing it for. So I think we need to stop looking at this. We need to stop worrying about this person and start worrying about our children. Start worrying about other people, how they will be actually engaged with police, with society, our children, and how we can help police better police our community and be partners with us. That's what they're here for. They're people. They're people. At the end of the day, they're people. And we are people too. And both of us need an equal amount of respect. But when it comes to our children, unfortunately, they're stuck right in the middle right now. And that's a dangerous spot. That's a gray space. Let's overlap that and let's join with the police departments, the emergency services department, firefighters, everything. Let's get this information in the system. Let's really get this information in the system so we can bridge that gap, so we can give that responsibility and be like, hey, this is my neighborhood. You know, I trust you to really protect us and protect my neighborhood. This is the information for my child. Will you do that? You're doing that by giving that information. You're asking the police officer right in his face, will you protect me and my child if it came down to it with this information? And they took an oath. Yes, they will. And if they don't, that's when we sit there and we get those officers out of that job because it's not for them. They're not doing what they signed up for.
So that begs the question, is there training that is currently in place that would support something like that? I'm not saying that all communities have access to this, to do this. Some communities may already have this type of access in place, right? They already have some type of system like this to be able to follow this process to make sure that people know, hey, you know, my child wanders off and he does not respond to his name or she does not pay attention, and no matter how much danger they may be in. So please just make sure if you see this child, like understand that they're on the spectrum and they're not going to pay attention. So sometimes you have to you know, whatever the procedure is to make sure that child stays safe. But are the police officers, is there current training now that you are aware of that would support providing this information? Because you can have all the information you want, but if you know that, okay, a child's on the spectrum or there's a person on the spectrum that is at the site or the scene of whatever I've been called to, I'm not even autism community adjacent. I don't know what's going on here. Is there some type of training that would make sure that there is a social worker or something called instead of the police?
So there's not enough training. I'm not going to hold you. I'm not going to lie to you. I'll say it right there. You know, police departments unfortunately suck when it comes down to that training. Are some police departments that are being proactive with it to their police chief. Hey, The police chief has the power to make things move in his department, in his or her respective department. They can call in companies. I know a couple of companies that actually speak to police departments personally, but it's not enough. Um, there's I haven't ran into too many me's, Jamiel Owenses that will go and say, "Hey, I would love to speak to your police department. Will you have me?" There's not enough in our communities. So once again, am I faulting police departments for not having that training? Yes, but I'm also faulting the so-called men in their communities who's not willing to go into these police departments and be like, "Hey, besides my feelings towards the police department, I want to teach you about autism so you guys are better equipped." There's not many. So I can't fault just the police department. I have to fault the men. Where are you at? Because I can't do this alone. You see what I'm saying? There are some police departments now, unfortunately, because of incidents that have happened recently with those individuals that are on the spectrum or have intellectual disabilities that have resulted in fatal casualties. There has been training. Definitely needed. But I wish it did not take for a child on the spectrum to die in order for you guys to realize, okay, we need some training about this. That's ridiculous. You know, um, it's very rare. It's very rare. I can't even hold you. I can't even, push the thought. Yeah, but it's happening here and there. It's not enough. Is it?
Yeah, that would be my only thing is that even providing this information, and I hear you. I hear you. I know that when we're equipped with more information, typically it's better. But if you don't have the correct training that you know how to use the information, it's not going to really do much. So I can understand if somebody's like, giving this information is going to do what for my child. Like I understand the principles of it, but if it's not going to, if there's not at least like a 40-50% chance that this is going to help, then
Mhm.
why would I take the chance of putting my child in more harm?
True.
Because especially in the 90s and early 2000s when I was tutoring, if I was talking with a child who was tested in the 6th grade and they told her that if she ever got into a fight she would be expelled because she had ADHD. So yeah, so if there's, and I'm not, and that could have changed, it's been 20 years, that could have changed, but there's so many negative consequences to a child on the spectrum acting out in a neurodivergent community that it makes it difficult for any parent, and me not knowing much about it on in the inner workings of it. But if that is the case where you have so many negative consequences that could come from interacting inappropriately in a neurodivergent community, I mean, a neurotypical community, it makes it even more difficult to try to help by saying, look, I want to give you information and possibly you can get some training so you can learn how to handle this so that when my kid who is neurodivergent comes to a neurotypical situation and they don't act how you want them to act, you'll have a better understanding. And that's all well and good in theory, but right now we don't have the space. I am glad there are men like you, far and few between, but I'm glad there are men like you who are stepping up and who are really trying to make a difference and make sure that you are the advocate for your kid when your kid cannot advocate for themselves at this point. And not just for your kid, but for your community, your household, your community, and those who probably don't know, can't get into the spaces you can get into. So with your career in corrections, with your career as a firefighter, and making sure that you are writing the articles that you write, the people who you interact with, the radio show you have, not everybody has those platforms. So it's really good that it's a male perspective that is offered in these spaces so that when men say, look, my kid is going through assessments right now, or we just got the diagnosis, where can I get support? And they know that they can turn to you and say, hey, I need resources.
Mhm.
Who can I talk? Is there a support group? Are there parents that I can connect with? How do I know what kind of therapies are going to be right? Like where is there, maybe I should go to therapy to learn how to get out of myself. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like there's so many things, and I'm not a man, obviously. So I don't pretend to know what the battle that you all face as far as learning to protect versus shelter, and how to choose between the two.
Mhm.
So in the talks, and we'll wrap this up a little bit after that, but this is the last topic, I promise.
It's
in
all-
in trying to make the decision between sheltering versus protecting, especially when you're dealing with a child or an adult or a teenager who is on the autism spectrum, how do you know what decision to make? Because it can be overwhelming. It
Mhm.
can be really overwhelming. So not only do you have to protect yourself, but you have to make sure that this person who may not be able to advocate properly or communicate properly in whatever community or situation that they're in, you have to make a decision. Should I shelter or should I protect? So how do you make those distinctions?
So I'm going to give you a little bit about my past. So my mom uh, suffered from schizophrenia and depression. And at one point, she did not trust me at the age of 16. I've been on my own since the age of 16. She literally kicked me out of my house. I slept on porches, I slept on couches, things of that matter. My father at that time was in my life. I had a choice of being sheltered within my own circumstances or uh, protecting myself, but experiencing life. Oh, I learned smack on the hand. I'm not going to do that anymore. Or I learned smack on the hand. Ooh, I like that. Let me do that again and get smacked again. That training, and I'm going to use the word training loosely because, God makes everything happen. It falls through his fingers. So it was purposeful for me to experience all this, gives me the opportunity to see now that I was at one point when my son was diagnosed sheltering. I was embarrassed to go out with him. I was embarrassed to take him to parks at the time that I was, divorced and dating. I didn't want them to know or meet my son. And then it came to a point where I sat there and said, okay, I don't need to shelter him from the world. I need to protect him. So I need to go to a playground and let him run around and be around kids and let them look at him weird and let the parents look at him weird. As long as they look and they don't comment or put their hands on him. But I need for him to understand that regardless of what goes on around you, you are still you. And you need to be you. It's funny, we promote this in society, be you, do you, be different. But when it comes down to an individual with disabilities, we're like, whoa, wait a second. Especially with autism. Whoa, 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 wait. That's a little too different. We need you to fall in line to this. This is the different we want you to be, not that different. No, I need to encourage him to be different. So I told you the story about my life is because I was thrown in the fire. I was thrown in that situation where I was like, listen, you're going to have to learn the difference between protecting your heart and really sheltering yourself. And you're going to learn it the hard way. And I did. What autism parents are doing, especially since the demographic of parents now are ranging from kids who are 16 that are becoming parents to like older adults, you have to be able to protect your child, but teach them about the world that they will live in. They have their own world, and then they have, the outside world. They have to live in this world. They can still be them, but they have to be functional inside this world. Protect them. Protect your heart. Protect what you know is right or wrong. Teach them that. Do not shelter them in like they're the worst thing that ever walked this planet. They're not. And once again, that backs and circles back around to you. Oh, I feel like people are going to laugh at my son and daughter. People are going to mock them. Listen, I have a disability myself, my right leg, an AV fistula. That means my right leg is extremely bigger than my left. I'm a part of the disability community. People used to laugh at me. Children used to laugh at me. They call me super leg. They call me big leg. Like everything you could possibly think of. Now that I find funny, they called me. But you know what my mom did before, the unfortunate events? She always pushed me out there. They're not going to touch you, son. Oh, no, they're not going to put their hands out on you. But you want to learn that people in this world may think differently from you. And what you're going to do is you're going to stand up for yourself and you're going to tell them who you are in a polite manner, because ignorance and ignorance doesn't cancel out. You can't be ignorant with an explanation to combat somebody who's already ignorant. You got to speak from love. And that's what I did. They say something about my leg. I say, yeah, it's a super leg. Come on, let's race. Oh, yo, you got a big leg. What happened? Oh, I got bit by a dog. Ha, ha, ha. That's love. No, let me tell you what happened. It was a surgery. Then to look at the aspect of what they did to save my life. I tell that story too. It's amazing. But you cannot shelter anybody in this world, especially autism children. You gotta, they're gonna test you. They're going to get on your nerve. You're going to have to repeat the same thing over and over again. That's called redirection. And that key point, that one thing that you need in this world, because everything doesn't come when you want it to, patience. They're going to teach you that, to be patient when they're constantly doing something like stimming, which is the regulation of overstimulation of their environment, when they're rocking back and forth or they're running along a linear object. That's going to be you that has to be patient and be like, oh, ladies and gentlemen, don't mind my son. He's just regulating. He's stimming right now. That's what it's really going to cause for. So I say all that to say this is that you have to push your child to experience the world, to see the world as differently as they already do, to see that. But at the same notion, you have to guard their heart. They have to guard their own heart. They have to. Do not shelter them. They are not an accident. They are not a caged animal. They are not a zombie from an apocalypse we didn't discover yet. They are a human being that has a signature on this planet. Let them find out what their signature is.
I wholeheartedly agree. I don't think that sheltering is going to help. But thank you so much for this conversation. Do you have one or two pieces of advice to help fathers and other men, grandfathers, uncles, brothers in the community, or a community adjacent, or maybe want to just learn how to be an advocate? One or two pieces of advice to help them learn how to be an advocate for people within and supporting the autism community.
Yeah, first off, get my book. That's like, no, that's not, that's just a shameless plug. Sorry. I really, really want the men to, I can't express my gratitude and my thankfulness about my spiritual grounding. Mm-hmm. I was a wreck, like I was bad. I'm not perfect now, but I was bad, and I believe wholeheartedly, without my spiritual grounding, I would definitely have been probably deceased or definitely in the wrong path. I implore, the only one piece of advice is find your spiritual grounding first. You have to heal yourself. Yes, there are therapists and psychiatrists out here, but you have broken people trying to help broken people. How is the cycle not going to be continuous? Yes, they have a PhD to kind of examine your mind and your aptitude and different things that are going on, but they're still imperfect people just like you. Find the spiritual grounding because it is a manuscript that has been deemed perfect by that respective religion. Find it, study it, hold yourself accountable by those laws and what you're supposed to do. You will find that inner peace first. When you find that inner peace, then you are able to educate your significant other, your wife, your children, your community. Now you are becoming an advocate just like I am. Now you're able to affect the world and how it runs and how it's changing, what needs to be changed in society. But you cannot do that without that. Listen, I watched my mother die in front of me due to cancer. My mom was my best friend. It was the worst thing that I have been able to see in my life. The one thing that she showed me before she passed away was that she dedicated her life to Jesus. That made me feel like everything that happened was okay. She was going to be fine. And in that strength, that's when I started to say, hey, what's going on with this Jesus guy and this God and this Bible? And I started to dig deeper. And I started to see things in there that related to my life. And that's how I got my spiritual grounding. That's when the anger came away from me. That's when the compassion started to grow. That's when the love really started to flow in my body. And then I was able to love on my son the correct way. Now I'm able to love on my wife the correct way. I mess up here and there still, not perfect, but I'm able to go back and be like, okay, this is not what Jesus would do. So let me get my act together and get back on the ball. You see what I'm saying? Start with spiritual grounding. Don't start with me. Don't start with you. Don't start with grandma and grandpa or nobody else. Start with your spiritual grounding. Run that foundation. Start building your pillars and get your house and your temple in order. And you, sir, or you, ma'am, because you might be listening to, ladies too, have just become an advocate for your community, which is your household. Now it's time to affect your outside community in the world. That's it.
Well, y'all know what we say here at Take a Space Podcast. Jesus in therapy, change your life. Let me tell you something. Jesus in therapy, that's what it is. Thank you so much to Jamiel for being on the show. This is your time to plug any and everything that you have going on, where people can find you, where people can follow you. If people need resources, if they're able to reach out to you, go ahead and plug away.
So I'm still plugging this away. This is my first book, the 15-day devotional for Fathers. Life is a puzzle. God gave you a cheat sheet. I sat here and quit my job. If my wife was able to get on this podcast, she would be like, she'll give it a look, because I just quit my job. It was like, you know what? I'm going to start my nonprofit, which is this. I'm wearing it right now. Ausomeness Incorporated. And what this is a website that's in development right now. It is a place where community is built. This is our mission statement, and the autistic thrives. So this will be a one-stop shop website for everything. We're not talking about big companies that service those on the autism spectrum that give you generalized, okay, here's where you find information, here's where you find providers. I'm going to have everything on there, everything that you could possibly imagine. I'm going to keep it on hush though, but look out for us. This book is on Amazon. Purchase this book now. It took me 1 week to write this book. 1 week to write this book from first page to last page. My heart and soul is in this. I'm working on my second book now too, which will be my bibliography. And that's a little bit thicker because I'm going to talk about those times where I slept on couches, the times where, I was troubled mentally, and, cops had to pick me up from one location to take me to my grandmother's. And I'm in the back of police vans with blood and stuff because they just had a trauma situation to call before that. I'm going to talk about all that. I'm going to talk about, fellas, you know, out here in the world, you know, dealing with sexual sin, how that corrupted me, how that stalled my progress to where I was at right now. You know, I'm going to talk about all that, but just look out for that. My website is up now, www.theawesomeshow, TheAusomeshow.com. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. Look us up. And Awesomeness Incorporated. We're both on both platforms. AUSOMENESSINC. But also too, you can hit me up, emails, and let's chat. Let's talk it up. But most importantly, I hope I'm able to speak at your function. If you have a service or something that you would like to do in the community, if you're a police department, judges, judicial system, anybody that wants to learn a little bit more about autism, I'm coming to you and I'm going to talk to you and I'm going to keep it real. So check me out. But thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it. You know, once again, it's not to have all eyes on me, solely me, Jamiel Owens, but it's for another man out there to listen to my story and be like, hey, if he can do it, I know I can do it. And that is the true payment. That is what I'm taking to my grave with myself.
I love it. I think it's great. Thank you so much, Jamiel, for being on the show. And thank you to all the listeners out there. Please make sure to go and follow up with Jamiel. Ask your questions, get your resources, check out his website, and make sure that you support if you're in the autism community or your autism community adjacent, or if you are even just getting started in the process, whether your kid is going through the assessments right now, or you just got the assessment results, or if a family member of yours is starting to go through the process or maybe in denial, this may be somebody that you need to listen to. Just maybe give them the episode and say, hey, you might want to check this out. But thank you so much for your support. Please make sure to follow Take Up Space Podcast at Take Up Space Pod, Take Up Space POD on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can see the video version of this so you can see our lovely faces on YouTube at YouTube / Champions of Discourse, or just go to YouTube and search Take Up Space Podcast, because that's where we are too. So thank you so much to Jamiel. Thank you so much to the listeners. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being a part of the Autism Advocacy series, and we will see you next time.